admin one, not the public.
$15,830.
Calls it public. We have this right now. All right. And they're calling me in, so I'm gonna meet you guys in a minute. So
We live? All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Avon Grove Charter School working session on Tuesday, August 17th. We're going to call our meeting to order. We do have a quorum. We're going to begin by standing and doing the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, if everyone would please recite the mission statement. And who's doing the roll call tonight?
I will.
Christina, thank you.
Wayne Degler,
Here.
Stacy Barno,
Here.
Michelle McCray. Here. Daisy Akintoy,
Here.
Julia Byram,
Here.
Brian Ladman,
Here.
Colleen Preston,
Here.
Christopher Schuck, and Eugene Steger.
Here. Thank you very much. Brian, do you have the guidelines for public comment?
So public comments on agenda items, if appropriate, will last 3 minutes per person for a total of 15 minutes. The Avon Grove Charter School Board of Directors recognizes the value of the school governance of public comment on educational issues and the importance of involving members of the public in board meetings. The board also recognizes its responsibility for proper governance of the school and the need to conduct its business in an orderly and efficient manner. In order to permit fair and orderly expression of public comment, the board requires that each statement made by a participant is limited to 3 minutes, that the public comment should last no longer than 30 minutes, and the board will allow public comment on agenda items prior to acting on them.
Great, thank you very much. Just a note tonight, the working session will not be discussing anything to do with masks or return to school. That will all be held at the board session starting at 7:30. All right, so I will turn it over to Ms. Bishop for the charter school renewal process.
Okay, so we are up for charter renewal. Every 5 years, we have to renew the charter with Avon Grove School District. Avon Grove School District made in 2018, made a policy on this process. And so I wanted to go over a little bit about the oversight and review of the charter and how this will go. So they annually assess the charter school every year. Every September, I present at the Avon Grove School District Board meeting, and that is how they annually assess our school year. We also annually report the annual report to them by August 1st, which was already submitted for this school year. So the next part of this is by certified mail, we submit a letter. The letter was written, I gave it to Stacy. And the letter states that the charter school's intent to seek renewal of its charter. Obviously, that's what we're going to do, is seek charter renewal for another 5 years. If the charter school is seeking any amendments to the existing charter, it shall be stated in the letter of intent. So that is new to the process. We've never wrote in the letter what our intent was. So if for whatever reason we want to do something different, let's say next year we want to submit a program that we didn't do at this charter renewal, we can go back to the Avon Grove School District and ask to amend the charter at any time. So it's not like we're locked into this for 5 years. However, it is a process. And so it's nice that we have this time that we can say, hey, we would like this to be said in our charter. Originally, I had a conversation just about online learning and things like that. We're not at a place after COVID to discuss an online learning program. So that would be something we would amend. But we do want to talk about the amount of students that are in the charter right now and look to amend and extend the amount that we have. Now, currently right now in this school building, we are at max capacity. There's really no room for any other students here at the school. We are looking to do a modular project, and the modulars that are outside, obviously replace them. And we are looking at a building in the back as an option, and we're pricing and vetting it out now. With that being said, in that proposal, there is a option to add 100 kids. Now, last night at the facilities committee meeting, we had a conversation about, are we vetting more kids? Can we build something bigger? Really, as part of our budget, that was not in discussion. Do we have kids in the lottery? Yes, over 600. So if we wanted to talk about that, allowing all kids to have a spot, but we have nowhere to put them. And based on the building project, it was really only for that 100 kids. So I'm looking for a number. Really, that number is guessing because right now we have no room and we don't have a building that's going to be ready even next year. And it might not even be ready for 5 years, but at least it would be in there saying that we would go to this capacity. So even with the new building, I think it's safe to say 2,200 would be max. If you want to say 2,500 to give a little flexibility, we can do that. It's really just throwing a number out there. But I'm proposing to the board, if you would like to do that now, it's just there for the next 5 years.
And does that, so for me, does that mean, so let's say 2,500.
Right.
Let's pick that number you said. That doesn't mean we have to hit that.
Nope.
That just gives us that. And the school district is still going to only be responsible for whatever number we come up with by district.
Exactly.
Okay.
In the 5 years, Dwayne, is for a commitment from you to stay as president for 5 years.
Out of curiosity, does, through this process, do they have a option of declining or ask?
They do. They do. So there's a lot that we would have to do for them to deny our charter. And if it's amendment, I'm assuming they can say, we're not going to do that number, but that doesn't mean they're not going to renew our charter. They would just come back to us within the time frame and say, we don't like that. We want you to keep your old number.
Yeah.
And so then I would come back to you and just say that specific clause. But for them not to amend our charter, you'd have to do a whole lot. You have to violate the law. You have to not have fiscal management, not pass audits, failure to meet student performance, one or more material violation of the written charter, convicted of fraud. So, I mean, it takes a lot for them not to be able to approve our charter, but we do have to follow this process. They were very strict about the letter at the last charter renewal. And so we want to make sure that all I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So I guess I'm just looking for discussion around the number.
Any other questions? So again, and I'm going to just reiterate what Deji said. If they say no to whatever number we pick, we're still at the current number.
Correct.
And it's actually what they term a maximum enrollment target.
Right.
So it's not a cap. They're not permitted by law to cap your attendance or your enrollment. But they are permitted to require you to define your maximum target enrollment. And if you're too far beyond that, you're supposed to go in for an amendment.
I mean, and what's our current, it's,
Like 1851 or something?
91.
so if you go to, that would give us,
So your maximum under your charter renewal is at 1850 right now.
so that would give us 350 more, went to 2,200. That sounds good. And it's only 5 years and we won't have, depending on modular building. I mean, does everyone else have any?
It's reasonable.
Yeah. I think so too.
Okay.
Comfortable.
I think we like it.
All right. So Stacy will take that. We'll revise the letter and then we're going to make sure that it gets to Chris, obviously Dr. Marchese, by the deadline, which is October 1st. So I explained I would have it to him sometime in August. So
Great.
I'll make sure I work with Stacy and we'll go over that. So I just want to finish the process. The district will strictly adhere to the schedule. So after they receive the letter, within 30 calendar days of receipt of the letter stating the charter's intent to renew, the board then has, I think it's 60 days, to come back to us and say, we like this, we don't like this, we need this information. And so then we collect all the information that they need. And then after that, the district shall advise the charter school of the date, time, and place of a public hearing within the next 30 days to consider charter school's renewal. After the public hearing, but within the 45-day receipt of the information from the charter school, the district shall notify the charter school that it intends to renew or not. In the event the board intends to renew the charter, it shall take necessary action at its regularly scheduled meeting or a special meeting after the notification. So talking to Chris, he'll give me that information. I'll respond. And he said probably sometime after January, he would look to have a special meeting to go over that information. So I don't see this being a problem. The last time there was a little hiccup in that process, but I don't see any problems, foresee problems in the future for this process.
That's good news.
Could we, I would like to be, I'm sure the board, could we be kept updated with invitations for any meetings that
Sure.
were this, so that if we want to attend, we could do that?
Sure. And then the only other thing that it says in here, obviously, that continues to pay for our public transportation. I wanted to make a point that we do pay for our own special education or out of the 10-mile radius. And it also says that the district shall only provide access to its extracurricular activities or interscholastic athletics for pupils enrolled in a charter school or regional charter school as required by law. And after the demonstration by the charter school that it does not provide an equivalent activity for its students. So I know some of the board members are new as we add sports. If we have that sport here, the school, our charter school students could not go back to their host school district and play that particular sport. And so that has been a topic of conversation and some of the reason why we haven't implemented a specific sport, going forward. So just so, and we might revisit that, but that is written in this process. So I thought it was important for you to hear so that you knew. Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions for Stacy while she's here, since this is a big deal as far as charter renewal?
So our first deadline is just that this goes out by October 1st, and it sounds like you're well ahead of that.
Yes.
We will not.
No.
Good job.
Okay. All right. And then next up is public participation in board meetings. So this conversation was around whether or not, what committee meetings and what board meetings are public that you want in person? Is there flexibility if a person cannot make it to the meeting to have them join by Zoom? Meaning if it's, I'll give an example, strategic planning committee meeting, teachers can only come by Zoom. Is that sufficient for the board, or would you like them here in public? And then the conversation around taping. So I'll let you take this, Stacy's here, and we can talk about options so that, make some decisions.
So there are two, we will say there are two committees that are not public. Those are the finance and the human resources. Those are not, but that it revolves around facilities and strategic planning. So I know we had a meeting with Brian, the strategic planning meeting, and it came up that the teachers like to be able to Zoom in because we get more participation that way. I was all for in live, but if we get more participation by Zoom and we are able to still broadcast it live, I am all for that. So this comes back to you guys, how you feel about it. So there's a couple things on the table. One, are we okay with having committee meetings, specifically facilities and strategic planning via Zoom, or some of us could be live and the rest could be Zoom, whichever way to do it. And then also broadcasting that live as we go through. And I'll let people talk about that first. Any comments?
I think I'm comfortable moving forward with it, but I don't think I understand the complete implications of doing that and what that leaves us open to as far as a liability.
So Sunshine Act, as we've talked about in our various retreats and other meetings, requires that any meetings of a public agency be held in public and that the public have every opportunity to attend and participate, hear and be heard at all times. During the prior year, of course, we had Act 15 that arguably allowed us to do all virtual and permit public comment only by way of emails that were set ahead of time. Now that we're out of Act 15, because the declaration of emergency has expired, we're in sort of this nebulous, weird world of everyone's concerned about, can we be virtual or not? The reality is charter schools and school boards frequently do meet virtually. There is a debate legally as to what the Sunshine Act requires. And what I've said to date is particularly with committee meetings, if it allows you to facilitate a more meaningful communication, more meaningful input, whether it be from the teachers able to participate virtually or whatever, I'm less concerned about that because the committees are merely recommending bodies to the full board. And they're not formally taking any sort of action. It's only the board that can take action. So I'm comfortable having virtual meetings at the committee level particularly if there's a purpose in doing so. If it literally facilitates communication, you will have a meaningful number of participants that you will not have, but for the virtual nature, I think you can certainly do that. And certainly COVID is going to give us other reasons to also consider some sort of hybrid or virtual option as well moving forward. Does that help?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm comfortable continuing virtually as well.
Yeah, so am I. And I know it affects Brian and myself and Julia and Eugene more than it does the other committee members. So, but I still want to put it out there. So just from a committee standpoint, we're okay with, everyone feels.
I think it just needs to be clear who's a member of the committee and who's a member of the public during particular strategic planning. Because I think there's varying members that have been in attendance. So I think if you're a member on a planning committee, you need to be identified. If it's virtually, you need to be identified as such. So having your name posted if it is via Zoom or sharing your name when you're making comment, I think is important because there are people, anybody can participate, meaning be a watchful person. But I think it's important that if you're a committee member that you share your name and who you are.
And currently, right now, these meetings are taped and then put out to the public. So if they cannot come to the meeting, obviously participants could Zoom in, but the public would have to come or they could watch it. Is that something that the board is going to continue to do as far as tape the committee meeting and then post it for the public?
So if it's a public committee meeting, the public has to have the in the moment opportunity to give public comment.
Right.
You can choose to say, if you want to give public comment, you have to come to the meeting in person, but that means you have to have at least some contingent present. If the committee intends to be virtual, then I think you need to use a Zoom platform or some other platform that will facilitate in time public comment so that you're heard and can hear in the moment.
And I
And
think,
just videotaping it isn't sufficient.
and we can look to, and we'll have to go through these hurdles, but we can look to our wonderful IT folks over there. They're both smiling at me like,
Every school
work out
board.
these little
Yeah.
details. And I think if I remember, Zoom has ways that, if the body is here and the participants are here, we can.
Yeah.
So we'll look for that. Yeah.
The technology has grown dramatically, as they all know. So there is a mechanism for doing it. It's just logistics.
So is everyone in agreement with that? Okay. Yep. So the next one is for,
And are we still taping them and then posting them? Obviously, if they're live or even virtual, that doesn't mean you're necessarily recording it and posting it.
Yeah, that's a separate decision to make.
Yeah. I,
We can.
I'm okay either way.
I like transparency.
yep. So, I mean, I'm okay with taping them as well and being able to show them on YouTube or however we do them. I'll just go around and just look for a nod if everyone's in agreement.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. And then there's the board meeting.
So I think the board meetings have to stay exactly like we're doing now. We'll do live participants. And they can come and make comments. We can broadcast live. And I think we should still tape and present them. We want to do transparency because there's a lot coming up.
Right. And there is some confusion among parents right now about coming to the board meeting. And if you have public comment, that you would have to come to the board meeting to make that public comment. That doesn't mean all the emails
Correct.
and feedback that is shared with the board is not read and considered in your decision-making, and they have every right to be able to do that. But I think because they are used to a virtual platform,
Yep.
they think that they can still submit comments virtually for the board meeting specifically. So I just wanted to make sure we clarify in this public meeting that if you have public comment, that you would have to come to the public board meeting.
That's correct.
Right.
You
And
can still submit something and we'll read it, but it will not be read at the public.
right. And I don't know whether you set up a separate email account for public comment. A lot of boards have done that so that you're segregating it from just any old emails or whoever's receiving it, those emails. I think it needs to be clear whether it's, if that is the case, I would suggest frankly that you shut that down unless that is going to be an opportunity for public comment so that it is abundantly clear that those emails will not be accepted anymore as public comment. And public comment needs to take place during the course of the meeting, whether it be virtual or in person.
Yeah, I don't think we have one, but they just seem to send right to the board.
Right, currently, Brian did collect just for specific math issues because we were getting so much communication for them to fill out a Google Doc for your feedback, but that wasn't in substitute of public comment. And so I just want to make sure that the public understands in this meeting that that was, I will clarify this again at the board meeting, but I think it's important so that we all understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
So going forward, just to reiterate, if you email or send any correspondence, it is not considered public comment for the board meeting. We'll still get it, we'll read it, it will be not read publicly. If you need to make a public comment, you will need to come to a live board meeting.
And then the other thing that I have is summer programs. So just because I know that the board meeting will have more discussion about our health and safety plan, I wanted to take a minute and talk about something really positive. So there was a lot of summer programs, and can you pull that up, that we had this summer. And I know a lot of us discussed what those programs would look like as the planning happened. And so these were the results. So we did have 65 K-3 students that were at Campbellsville. It was overwhelmingly positive feedback for caregivers and staff. There was also a virtual book club. We had 25 4th through 8th grade students virtual. That was virtual teacher facilitated. And then ESY, we had Avon Grove students who were eligible for extended school year, had 5 weeks of instruction at State Road. Students from kindergarten through 11th grade went under the sea to partake in social emotional learning activities, as well as direct instruction in reading, writing, and daily math. So we had really great, successful summer programs. Along with that, we had a day at the park with the principals that surprisingly was really well attended and very exciting. So I know Ryan and Maggie are both here, and I ran some of those programs. I don't know if you want to say anything that I missed or add on to that.
I would just say that if we have the day at the park with Kelly Henderson and I, we were able to get into the park in all of our communities, and there were, like Chris said, about 150 families. So it was very exciting to see the kids and talk to the parents.
Thank you. Awesome.
Awesome.
Yep.
Great.
Any questions about the programs?
No, great job.
I did want to mention, and I will mention again today at the next meeting. I know some of the confusion with masks is this was optional because our numbers were low to wear a mask, and these programs did have students without masks. And we did not have COVID numbers. So I just wanted to make sure that I know that's a concern, that we did have successful programs where masks were optional. And I'll talk a little bit about it at the board meeting, but since we're talking about summer programs and I did have some concern, I want to make sure the parents that you hear that as board members.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else on the agenda? Is there anything that we haven't copied that we need or stuff that we need to bring up? Well, that was a quick working session.
It was.
Do you want to talk about the facilities proposal now or not?
Yeah, why don't you do that? That would be great.
Do you
So,
have a copy?
Yes, and I sent it around to the board.
Okay.
So hopefully people had an opportunity to look at it. I apologize for the last minute.
no, Brian, thank you.
So we finished up on this about 8 o'clock last night, and Heckendorn and Giles Architect shared with us their proposal for the third phase of, I guess this was not really discovery because that's a legal term, but moving forward with planning for the possible new building replacement for the modular units. And so they've done quite an impressive job with mock-up at this point, and next they need to move forward with additional architecture work and design work so that Donna can move forward and attempt to pitch this to bonds, to obtain bond funding. So that's not right now, but next in the meeting, we'll need to go ahead and vote to accept this proposal to move it forward.
Was there any big changes in dollar amounts requested or anything like that?
Well, the next hunk that's required is going to cost about $215,000. So it's not trivial. As I understand it, the funds have already been earmarked and they are just quote unquote waiting to be spent for this. So this wasn't a surprise. This is just a natural progression in attempting to replace those modulars as we discussed in our annual meeting.
And if, I don't know if we'll be able to, but it'd be great if we could, when we get to the board meeting, just show some of these pictures, especially this one mock-up.
I know, that's exciting.
I don't know.
I can share that with IT and we could probably pull that up for them.
Yeah, I mean, I know you can't see it in the public, but stand by for the board meeting. It is beautiful. So it's one of the options. So.
The mock-up's it's a fantastic looking facility, but the breakdown for the various fees shows up on page 4 of the proposal. So we'll be looking for approval to pass that along.
And just for the board, I did bring this up at the facilities committee meeting. I know some of the community has asked if I vet it or the board has vetted properties that wasn't just building a building in the back of State Road. And I am currently working with a commercial realtor, also with Heckendor and Shiles, to see if there's any empty buildings or property that would be less money to renovate. We are obviously experts in renovating old buildings. But currently, right now, I have not found an option that would be less expensive than this option. And so if I do find something that becomes worth looking at, I would bring it to your attention, but I want to make sure that the community hears that we're vetting outside properties as well. And Fred S was on the table, but no longer on the table. I just want to recap that because of a leasing option versus a buying option.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Brian. Is there anything else? All right, well then I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
And second by Eugene. All in favor? Aye. All right, this ends our working session. Our school board meeting will begin promptly at 7:30. Thank you very much. All right. Good evening, everyone. We're going to call our meeting to order. This is the Avon Grove School District Board meeting for August 17th. We're going to go ahead and start the meeting. We do have a quorum. If everyone in the audience and the board will join me and stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And if the board will cite the mission statement.
To inspire
Passion for lifelong learning, one student at a time. The board did hold an executive session to discuss a personnel matter earlier this evening. Christina will do roll call, please.
Sure. Wayne Degler,
Here.
Stacy Barno,
Here.
Michelle McCray,
Here.
AG Akintoy,
Here.
Julia Byram,
Here.
Brian Ladman,
Here.
Colleen Preston,
Here.
Christopher Shuck, and Eugene Becker.
Here.
Well, thank you very much. I hope everyone got to review the board working session minutes for June. Again, we did not have a meeting in July. I do need a motion to approve.
Make that motion.
Thank you, Michelle McCray. A second.
I'll second Stacy Barno.
Any discussion or comments? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? So moved. Thank you. Again, the approval of the board minutes for the same night, June 15th. This was the public board meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll motion. Michelle McCray.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Brian Ladman, I'll second.
Brian, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? So moved. We did have our annual board meeting on June 29th. Again, I need an approval for the board meeting, the annual meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
How much you could approve, Stacy Akintoy?
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second Julia Byram.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? So moved. Thank you very much. Brian, we'll move on to student enrollment, please.
Student enrollment for the month ending July 31st, we had an active student enrollment of 1,958 students. That's 67 over our 21-22 budget count. We also had an additional 9 students who were currently sort of in limbo where they've accepted positions and we're just waiting on documentation before they roll in for billing. We had 103 students withdraw over the summer to the point of July 31st with 290 new students being enrolled. So far to the period of July 31st from when we opened our applications, we've had 654 new student applications for the 21-22 school year and still currently have 279 students on the wait list across all grade levels.
Thank you very much. We do not have a student representative report yet, so we'll have that at the next one. Before we move forward, I'd just like to read a statement to the audience. Thank you for being here, everyone. Thank you very much. The Avon Grove Charter School Board of Directors recognizes the value of school governance, of public comment on educational issues, and importance of involving members of the public in board meetings. The board also recognizes its responsibility for proper governance of the district and the need to conduct its business in an orderly and efficient manner. In order to permit fair and orderly expression of public comment, the board requires that each statement made by a participant is limited to 3 minutes. Our normal limitation on public comment is 30 minutes. However, this evening we will be going through the list. If you did not get to fill out, if you'd like to make a comment regarding anything we're discussing, there is a list up here to sign up for. We have requested that everyone who wishes to make the public comment sign up as they specified. Brian, Mr. Bruto will recognize individuals who have signed up and give you the opportunity to step forward and make your comments within the 3 minutes allotted. Please identify yourself by name and address so that the minutes can properly note who is speaking. While I understand that a number of topics to be discussed this evening have been the source of a lot of strong feelings on both sides of our community and elsewhere, I would request that the comments be made respectfully. The board wants to hear your comments. However, I will rule out of order scandalous, impertinent, and redundant comments or any comment that appears to be made for the purpose of disrupting or preventing the conduct of the business of the meeting. We will be discussing the masking meeting, but I know a lot of you are here for that. What I ask is we are going to go through and do our business and save that for the end. So if everyone has comments on any of the topics that we will be discussing, feel free. But I would just ask, let us get through the main business so that we can give you the full opportunity. Is that fair? Thank you very much. All right. Having said that, read that all out. I did want to take a minute before we go on to our committees, and I did want to thank, there's a lot of people that made this possible tonight, and they don't go appreciate it enough. I want to thank IT. Thank you very much. Everyone give them a round of applause. I mean, just setting this up is amazing. Thank you very much. I also would like to recognize who have been working over the summer. The facilities department has been doing a fabulous job. There's a lot of changes with windows and construction. And again, a lot of these people go unrecognized because they're behind the scenes. So again, thank you very much to all of them. I can't name them all, but they're doing a fabulous job. So, and not to mention the administration. I'm not letting you guys down, but I want to recognize everybody. So we'll move along. Deji, you have your finance committee, but did you want to defer to the treasurer?
I'll defer to the treasurer's report, please.
Thank you very much. Facilities planning committee, Brian?
All right, thanks, Dwayne. Good evening, everybody. We had the facilities meeting last night, so unfortunately, we don't have an opportunity to distribute the minutes yet, but we will get those out. Mr. Curry and his team has done a fantastic job upgrading many of the facilities in the building, both here and over at the ELC. So thank you very much for that effort. Many of the projects are slated to be completed at the end of August. So obviously getting a lot of the materials was a challenge this summer, not a surprise, but it looks as if we'll be all ready to go by the start of the year. The biggest thing that we covered last night was the proposal for professional architecture and engineering schematic design services, the State Road Campus Master Plan Phase 3. And so at this point in time, as we said in the working group meeting, we need to vote to move forward and accept this proposal. It is Phase 2, if you will, of the process to investigate the possibility of replacing the modular buildings that have reached the end of their useful life.
I know Kristen was going to provide an image just so everyone can see. So this is a conceptual image of hopefully what the building could look like if we move forward with this choice. And I thought everyone would like to see it. I think it's pretty, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so there was a meeting in June and we discussed options for the replacement of the two modulars out in the front for the middle school, high school. So in this plan, this is actually going to be a proposal that will be planned for the back of State Road to house our middle school, high school, and a new gym. So we are vetting properties in the community, just so everybody knows we are masters at taking old buildings and making them new. So we are vetting other properties before that's an option to build. Fred S. was on the table. However, Avon is only looking to lease the building, which means we wouldn't be able to put kids there and then when they need it, not have anywhere to go. So it's really not a feasible option for us at this time. So we are looking at other properties, but in the meantime, we're also looking to vet building that building at the end of our State Road property. Those modular replacements, they're up, they're on their last leg. So, and it's really to house the current students that we have plus 100. We really don't have the finances or the space to build anything bigger than that. So that was the option that was proposed to the board. So you see here the layout for extra classrooms, for offices, and for a new gym.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, so on the table is a motion to approve.
Go ahead. Motion to approve the proposal for professional architecture and engineering schematic design services, State Road Campus Master Plan Phase 3.
Second.
What he said.
I'll motion.
Okay, and a second, Eugene? Okay, any discussion, question? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? So moved. Thank you, Brian. Moving right along, Human Resources Committee, Vicky?
The Human Resources Committee does not meet in the summer months, so we will be resuming in September. And for the public, the Human Resources Committee is not a public meeting. It is a meeting between the Human Resources personnel here at the school, 2 board members, as well as Quest. Quest is a group of teachers that have committed to meeting with Human Resources to talk about issues and concerns, as well as their feedback as we move forward with staff and personnel here at the charter school.
Great, thank you very much. Strategic planning, myself, we're basically going to go through it later, so you will hear it when we get to masking. So I will get that at this point and move forward. Okay. We'll move on to head of school presentation.
Okay. All right, I am going to take my mask off while I present. I want you to know I am vaccinated, so just wanted to put it out there. And I was tested, so just so everybody knows. Before I get into this presentation, and I'm going to have the tech pull up the presentation, I wanted to read a few things. I don't have anything formally ready for this, but I wanted to make sure I remember all these key points. The first thing is the amount of emails, phone calls, and meetings that I've had this summer. I want you to know that we've read every email. I forward everything that you didn't send to the board. I have forwarded all of your emails. I have conveyed the messages from meetings that we've had. And I also have discussed phone calls that I might have had with parents. So if you're not here and you're not publicly speaking, I want to make sure that everybody understands that this room is representing a population, but there was tons, hundreds of phone calls, conversations, and emails that were sent to the board that we read and understand every single perspective that was put out there prior to this board meeting. So I also wanted to say that, last year at this time, it was about getting kids back into school and what mitigation efforts we were going to have so that kids could come to school. And we were successful in those mitigation efforts and we had a great school year. Did we have to quarantine students? Yes. Did we have positive students? Yes. But we did have a lot of mitigation available. We did not have vaccinations yet for teachers, and our teachers, for the most part, are vaccinated. So a lot has happened since last year at this time. Over the summer in June, we were given the opportunity with the vaccinations to lift our masking because our Chester County numbers were low. We understand, or at least I understand, I don't want to speak for the board, I understand you've had students here in summer programs that had the option to wear a mask, to not wear a mask. And it's very frustrating for anybody to have a student over the summer say, we were moving forward, we had the option, kids came to school, and they didn't have to wear a mask. The numbers have changed since the summer, and I'm going to go over those things for you, but I do understand that perspective, and I want to make sure that people understand there was a time frame where that was the case. Also, the CDC, we're going to go through all of the Delta variant data, the health department. I want to make sure everybody understands we have always followed the health department's recommendations since the beginning of this. Every meeting that we've had has been the backing of the health department in Chester County. We meet weekly with them. And all the superintendents, all the Catholic schools, private schools, charter schools in Chester County meet with the Chester County Health Department. They advise us, give us the numbers, talk to us about the hospitals. So I think it's important for you to understand that that is also constant communication between administration and the county. As far as our commitment as school administration, our commitment is to 5 days of school for kids. Obviously, I think everybody can agree that's what you want. You want your kids in school learning. I know that we're going to talk a lot about mitigation efforts. My hope is that whatever is decided, that most of our conversation after that, since we know mitigation is something we can do, I think it's important that we make the conversation about learning. These kids have gone a long time in and out of school, and they need to be here 5 days a week, and the conversation needs to change. I wish I had as much conversation about kids learning to read as I did masks. I mean, it is a lot, and I think that administration's intention is to really focus on learning here at school. The other thing I wanted to say is obviously safety is always at the forefront of all of our minds. And that as AGCS families, I know that some of you that wrote, you've been family here for 10 years, decades. And it's really hard for any of our hearts to hear that, you know, pending the decision tonight and mitigation efforts, that this school is no longer the school you'd like to be a part of. I hope that that's not the case. I hope that you continue to be a part of Avon Grove Charter School. Nobody wants you to leave the school because of a mitigation effort. I understand if we did something to disrupt your child's learning or that there's something wrong with the academics, but the fact that mitigation is part of this conversation, families are always going to disagree. And I hope that tonight you hear whatever the board decides, you hear the rationale, and that as you publicly speak, we remember that we're going to agree. Some are going to agree with others, but I think it's important that we as a charter school have always been family and we're respectful of each other. So those are the points I want to make before we get into the presentation, but here we go. So, sorry, first slide. Next slide. So these are the recommendations. So Pennsylvania Department of Education, the Department of Health, the Chester County Health Department are all recommending for us to follow the CDC guidelines. CDC is not a governing body and cannot make mandates at school. That must be done by state or local level. So what does that mean? That is why you're hearing board in Delaware, the state saying it's a mandate mask, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania has not. And so the CDC does not make that recommendation globally. It's something that has to be at the state or local level. The US Supreme Court, I've been to many meetings, just so you know, many district Chester County meetings, and there's been a lot of conversation around legality and the law. And so the US Supreme Court did decide mandatory COVID testing and masking are not constitutionally problematic. So I wanted to put that out there, that it has been vetted and that is something that is circulating as well. As far as our framework tonight for the presentation to the board, for the board to make a decision, obviously the health and safety of students, staff, and community is at the forefront of our decision-making. Social distancing of 3 feet recommended, but not maintained throughout the school setting. Social distancing is not going to happen at Avon Grove Charter School. We're going to do the best we can, but I can't guarantee 3 and 6 feet this school year.
Should he change the slide?
Say it again.
It's on the right slide.
Yeah, yeah. Keeping students in a face-to-face school setting to the greatest extent possible is also the priority for us. Kids, obviously not all kids did well online, and it's really important that we have time in school with them face-to-face. Operational concerns relating to quarantine requirements, we're going to talk about that. Any student that has to go and leave 10 days, 14 days, it is very difficult. I do not want to call any moms this year and say, you can't go to the prom. I don't want to call any parents this year and say, I'm sorry that we're calling you. Your child's going to have to quarantine again for the 3rd time and miss 30 days of school. That is very difficult conversations to have. And they did happen last year. And I would like not to have those conversations this year as much as possible. As far as the COVID-19 incident and positivity rates, we're going to talk about what that looks like, and then vaccine availability and eligibility. Next slide. So like I said, in the summer, we talked about the numbers and why optional was on the table. And you can see week 1, which is our most current, we're at 338 positive case counts. We were at 95 4 weeks ago. As far as the incident rate per 100,000, it was 18.10 and is now 64.38. Positive PCR test count, 377. All PCR test count, 8,255. The percent of PCR positivity, 4.57. Now this is something we used last year. in all the conversations that we had. I'm sure if you were a family of ours, you remember every Friday we came out with what the counts were in those charts. So a lot of the school districts are looking to say, we want you to have the option, if we're low risk, to be able to say, you know, mask or no mask. When we were talking about this last year, it was a lot about could kids come to school insubstantial or very high. Now the conversation is if we're insubstantial or very high, should they wear a mask or should they not wear a mask with the people that have been vaccinated? So that's really the conversation from last year to this year. So currently, right now, we are in the substantial range. All right, so CDC quarantine isolation recommendations. So a close contact is still someone who's within that 6 feet distance to a positive person for more than 15 minutes. There is an exception that the CDC put out, which is confusing for a lot. And we're still wrapping our head around it. But the exception in a K-12 indoor classroom setting is that the close contact definition excludes students who were within 3 to 6 feet of an infected student, and both the infected student and the exposed students are wearing masks. So if the students are both wearing masks, there's potential that they don't have to quarantine. If they don't have a mask on, then the Chester County Health Department is saying you would have to quarantine everyone. And so again, the debate about this in school is all about how many kids are we going to have to quarantine if you wear a mask or you do not wear a mask. And so that's the conversation that we're having. And that's the conversation that is playing into a lot of what the districts are talking about too. So people who are fully vaccinated, they get tested. If they were with a positive person, they have to get tested within that 3 to 5 days after their exposure. Even if they don't have symptoms, they have to wear a mask. So if they don't have symptoms, they can come to school, but they have to wear a mask. They want you to wear a mask for the full 14 days. However, if you come with a negative test in that 3 to 5, then that would say you wouldn't have to. So there is conversation around fully vaccinated people. What does that mean? Now, if you have symptoms and you're a vaccinated person, which vaccinated people are getting COVID. So if you are a vaccinated person and you have symptoms, then you would have to stay at home. You wouldn't be able to come to school with your mask on. We're asking all people that have COVID symptoms to stay at home until they're tested. So the CDC's recommendations regarding masks is that fully vaccinated people, CDC recommends universal indoor masking for all teachers, staff, students, and visitors to K-12 schools, regardless of vaccination status. Children should return to full-time in-person learning in the fall with layered prevention strategies in place. So here are the options that are on the table, and we're putting all options on the table. I know some of you discussed the strategic planning committee meeting. The strategic planning committee meeting is not a board meeting. There's no board vote. It's conversation among teachers, board members, anybody that's on that committee to start discuss this plan. So I know some of you watched that meeting and thought that there was conversation that was leading to decision-making, and that was really not the case. It was to put these options on the table for them to ask questions, just to put that out there. So obviously transportation is not our rules. That actually is a federal law, and they're saying you have to wear masks on buses. So we have no control over busing. So the option is follow the CDC's recommendation and implement universal masking regardless of vaccination status at both campuses and adhere to mask exception requirements. So that's option one. We follow the CDC's guidelines. We all wear masks. 1A is to implement universal masking through October 1st and reassess. So instead of coming back every week and saying we're low, we're high, wherever, we say we wear masks for the whole month of September. We assess how many schools are quarantining, what does the numbers look like, and then October 1st, come back, make a decision and say, are we lifting this or not? Option two is that we implement masking policy based on an incident and positivity rate within the county. So here it shows you the high and substantial range. We're saying masking is required for all, and obviously transportation. In moderate, we're saying recommend it, which means optional, but we're recommending the CDC's guideline, which is for all students, but that's where it would be optional. And then low also making a recommendation for all, but again, optional in the low and moderate range. Option 3 is to implement a policy of mask optional regardless of vaccination status. And then 3B, implementing a policy of mask optional for vaccinated students. The administration is really struggling with that option in that we're not asking parents if students are vaccinated or not. And so that would be a very difficult option. I'm putting that out there to the board because the administration has discussed that and we are not asking for vaccination status, so that would be a harder option. So before I go on to any slides, I just want to make sure the board has time to digest what I'm saying, ask questions about these options that are on the table.
I think they're thorough.
So Kristen, can you just clarify, excuse me, I apologize. Can you just clarify again for me, the whole, if child 1 is unmasked and child 2, 3, and 4 are unmasked and 1 gets positive, how that works and they're all quarantined?
If you're in a classroom and some kids have masks, it's optional, some kids don't. We call the health department, we have a positive case. And the likelihood of them saying you have to vaccinate the classroom, because we can't say who is quarantine, quarantine the classroom. We don't know who was with who. We don't know the social distancing. The lunchroom would be different. We're going to keep assignments in the lunchroom, but it would be very difficult. And so we would have to we would have to quarantine.
We're not vaccinated.
Right, sorry. We'd have to quarantine the classroom. However, if everyone is masked appropriately, the Chester County Health Department is saying that only the positive student would definitely have to quarantine, and there would be a lot more flexibility around kids staying in the classroom because they were fully masked. Holly is in the audience, who's our school nurse. So she, if I'm not making sense, she's here to clarify for me. And Brian's here too to clarify.
Yeah.
So just to make sure if I'm not making sense, make sure that you clarify so you
So
know.
it could have a huge trickle down effect.
Yes.
I understand. I'll go around. Any other questions?
Yeah, just a question between the CDC option 1 and 2. Is there a significant difference in the implementation of either one of those?
So obviously, if we do a full, everybody wears a mask, that is less communication to the parents. We just say we're wearing a mask. You could do for the month, take a look at the data. We're going to get data weekly no matter what. Whatever you decide, we're still going to get weekly data. However, if you do option 2, with the transparency to the parents, you can say that we are revisiting this, and based on the numbers, you are making a decision as a board to give parents the option. So if we're in the high substantial, it would make more sense to protect the kids because we have higher numbers. However, if we're low transmission, the likelihood at Avongrove, it's not as great. So it gives more flexibility in that, but more communication and implementation, more administration. Obviously, every Friday we'd have to communicate where we are and if we're wearing masks or not next week.
It sounds to me that there's a little bit more, for lack of a better word, like ambiguity in the communication process between yourself and parents with that option. Is that
right? A little more flexibility in that what we're telling parents as far as, optional or not, it gives you a little more leeway to protect kids in the high and substantial range, but then in the low, give them the flexibility of mask or no mask.
And then can I ask the question about the consequence of quarantine? If we're identifying that would get kicked into motion no matter what, if a kid is symptomatic?
If somebody's symptomatic and has COVID symptoms, they would have to stay home until they got a COVID test at this appropriate date. And Holly, it's the same process as last year. You would still keep your child home, call the school nurse. She would talk to you about when the symptoms started, when the test should happen, when you can come back to school. So the process from last year would be the same. If they have no symptoms and they're vaccinated and they were with somebody, then they could wear a mask, come to school, get a test in that 3 to 5 day and be good to go. If everybody's wearing a mask in the classroom, then that also gives some flexibility to who gets quarantined and who doesn't. In the lunchroom, we'll have a seating chart. So depending, obviously, if they're not wearing a mask and they're eating lunch together, then if a positive person, it would be the 3 to 6 feet within that table and the kids on the seating chart that would have to get the call on quarantining. As far as the recess yard outside, right now, we're proposing mask optional outside. Any kind of sport, strenuous activity, CDC is still saying mask optional for those things.
So in the interest of keeping kids in the classroom and in the school, it seems like the simplest, okay, I think I get it.
Yeah.
I think I get it. It's complex.
So but in option 1 and or 2, three's optional, but 1 or 2 I would think that you would be looking, or you said we get data weekly, and I think in the fall, what we said, or last year, we kind of went on we review, and if there's a set period of time, whether it's 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we said, in case there was a drop and it was an inaccurate drop or whatever, just to make sure it wasn't a false positive, so to speak.
Right.
I would think we should also consider that whatever we decide, if you go with those route, we should come up with a recommendation that there is a set period that says we're going to review it over this number of days, weeks, whatever, before we make any changes. Does that make sense?
I think that absolutely makes sense because option 2 would definitely require more conversation of how you would go, not just from Friday to Monday, but like if we get a hurricane for a week and no one's getting tested, that would change the numbers and we shouldn't just like change on a dime just from one number.
Right.
And I do appreciate how we had it last year where it was the 2 weeks.
Follow the number.
Right, but that would require more of a discussion.
And I do know there was some confusion around CDC's numbers, Chester County's numbers, and I want to make sure I get this right, Brian, so make sure I say this right. Chester County's numbers are Thursday to Thursday, correct?
Correct.
And then they report on Friday.
Correct.
And then CDC's numbers rolling 7 days. So that's why sometimes there's a discrepancy between Chester County's numbers and CDC and what they're reporting.
And Chris,
We went by Chester County, right?
That's right.
We always did the front.
We've always gone by Chester County Health Department.
But local numbers.
and I think there's been a lot of conversation about school district numbers because we are a charter school and we have numerous students from many districts. That's not a feasible option when we have people coming from multiple school districts. So I know some school districts are looking at what are your local numbers within your districts of ups and downs, but that's not a feasible option since we pull from many, many districts and sending areas.
Any other questions or comments? I want to make sure everyone has a time to ask.
Yeah, I think my only Kristen addressed it was, my question was like outside recess, all of that kind of stuff.
Right. So we would follow the guidance of strenuous activity. So they would be outside running around, mask would be optional.
Stacy, can we comment and do the rest? Or
What, I'm sorry?
or just comment on this and do the rest, or do you want us to?
I would go through the rest of the presentation and then open it up.
Bear with us, we just want to get through the other stuff, so bear with us.
Okay, so next slide. I can pull that slide up when parents are
Yes,
speaking. We can
please.
do that. Okay. So mask exception guidelines. Some of you have asked about who can get exempt from wearing a mask. A person who cannot wear a mask or cannot safely wear a mask because of a disability is defined by the Americans with Disability Act. So that's one way that a child might not wear a mask. And then a person of whom wearing a mask would create a risk to workplace health, safety, or job duty as determined by the relevant workplace safety guidelines or federal regulations. So currently, right now, that is how they are asking for mask exemption guidelines. Now, the only reason I included this is because part of this meeting is that we are approving a new health and safety plan. And so some of this language is changed on our health and safety plan. So I just wanted to make sure that the board saw it. So scenario 1 here is the person is vaccinated, yes or no, with no symptoms. So the answer is no, they come to school, right? They're vaccinated, they don't have symptoms, they come to school. If COVID-19 symptoms are present, yes or no, if it's yes, then the individual, including those that are fully vaccinated, should be tested for COVID-19. Individuals awaiting test results should be excluded from school. So if you are sick and you have COVID-19 symptoms, you're going to call the nurse and the nurse is going to tell you test, when to test, when you can come back to school, regardless of vaccination status. Just want to make sure I got that. Okay, next slide. So a positive COVID-19 test with symptoms. If that's a yes, 24 hours with no fever, without medication, and improvement in symptoms, and 10 days since symptoms first appeared. So 10-day, you quarantine, talk to the nurse, no symptoms, medications aren't involved in that, masking any kind of symptoms. Positive COVID-19 test without symptoms. The answer is yes, it's still 10 days after the test was collected. If symptoms develop during the 10 days, then they follow the return guidance of number 3. So all of this will be spelled out in communication to the parents, just to put out there so that we know exactly how that works. And again, the nurses will talk to you about what that looks like as well. Close contact is still within that 6 feet for more than 15 minutes. However, we already talked about the K-12 classroom indoor setting exceptions. Close contacts with symptoms, still the yes, no, 24 hours. So all of these things are spelled out in that health and safety plan. Close contact with COVID without symptoms, yes, no. So this chart is in the health and safety plan, would follow the same guidelines and then be communicated to the parents. So just important highlights for us that we want to just highlight before you make a decision and hear the parents. We want to recognize that we have strongly in support of masks, parents that are strongly in support of masks because of medical concerns for their children, some with medical problems that their children have, and concerned teachers, same, some that are concerned, some that want masks and some do not. And then again, we're strongly opposition to masks on all sides. So I just wanted to make sure we all are aware that there is both sides. AGCS wants our students to return to school safely to learn in person. Vaccination rates for Chester County are high, according to Chester County Health Department. 75% of those 12 and up have received at least 1 shot. Case numbers are on the rise. The Chester County Health Department reported that we're in a substantial transmission rate. Quarantine will be implemented as determined by the Chester County Health Department. The guidelines include those close contacts with infected individuals, and there are exceptions based on vaccination and mask wearing status, which we reviewed. And then next slide, AGCS will have full day in-person instruction program for all students K-12. We will run a normal instructional schedule and provide breakfast and lunch to school each day. We do not have an online learning program. However, when students have to quarantine, we will be giving asynchronous work and opportunities for blended learning and Zooming. It's going to depend on the grade level and the discretion of the teacher. So as we communicate it out, whatever the board decides, we will have a communication to you what that online learning program would look like, but it's not an online school that you can opt into for an entire quarter, semester. We are doing in-person learning 5 days a week. Then we also are committed to supporting the social emotional needs of both students and staff. We recognize how the pandemic has impacted our community as a whole and individuals in varied ways. We are prepared to provide support as needed. So that was just to really recap everything that we've discussed. And I'll go back, if you want to go back to the options, and then up to you, how you want to move forward with the public.
All right, so we will open the floor to public comment about this. I remind everyone, there's a 3-minute time limit. There's a lovely big clock over here. If you can't see it, it's as big as we could get. Please keep that in mind. It is not personal. It is just to keep the comments to a reasonable amount of time.
Is there anyone that did not put their name on the list that would like to speak? Okay.
So Brian, Mr. Bruno will start reading off the list. And then once you get up here, introduce yourself and your address so that we can record it, and then we'll start the timer.
So first up is Meredith, I'm sorry if I butcher anybody's names. Naming me.
And just so you know, we can hear you. These mics will pick up your,
If you just speak loudly, those mics will come from
Okay, thank you. I'm Meredith Nussbaumer, Coach Quill School District, and my son is a rising second grader. You mentioned referring mostly to health and learning, and I can definitely touch on both of those things here. I'm here to request that the parents have the right to decide if their child wears a mask all day or not. My argument against mask mandates is based on me putting my child first. According to the CDC, the mortality rate for the flu for kids is higher than the mortality rate for COVID. And I don't think anybody suggests masks for the flu. In my opinion, this indicates that perhaps politics and fear may be behind this entire mandate. When I think about kids wearing masks all day, every day, it concerns me for many reasons. First of all, adults are in charge of their own masks. We can pull it down, push it up, move it aside, take it off when we want. But our kids, they would be reprimanded if they let it fall down below their nose. If they do it again, they may be threatened with a letter being sent home to mom or dad. I think about the kids that have asthma or the kids that simply wear glasses and how awful they fog up when you have a mask on. What about a child who's taking a test, maybe struggling with a math problem? Their heart rate goes up, their breathing gets heavier. If they have glasses, they're fogging up. I feel like they're probably so uncomfortable that the chances of them getting that answer correct have just decreased by quite a bit. What about the kids that drop them on the floor in the bathroom and then put them right back on their face again? What about the developmental and psychological damage of forcing them to breathe through sweat, spit, and dirt all day? Or not being able to read facial expressions and cues? How about the damage we do by implying that air is toxic, that the people around them are sick? Remember, my son is 7, and we're also talking about kindergartners and first graders. How about the dangerous particles that have been found on masks, like those that cause pneumonia, tuberculosis, or other diseases? How about the toxic levels of carbon monoxide that they're breathing for 8 hours a day? I believe that the end needs to justify the means, considering that every adult in this building has access to a vaccine. Sorry. And that the mortality rate for kids in COVID is lower than flu. It is irrational, and it is not backed up by data or even common sense to require kids to be asked to be masked all day, every day. It is our duty to put our kids first, not make them bear the weight of our fear and political divides. I implore you to please allow parents their parental rights to decide whether their child wear a mask or not.
Thank you. We're being technological with the clock, so bear with us. So, Brian.
Next up, David Longnecker.
Before I start at all, I just want to thank the board. The school has been one of the few places that my children have really loved learning. And that's because of the things that you guys have put together, and I want to thank you for that. My name is David Longenecker. I'm in the Avon Grove School District. And I understand I'm a pastor, so I get the divide between the opinions that people have. I also were listening to you and understand that the biggest concern really has to do with having to force children to quarantining and how can we keep kids in the class, right? So I think that everyone has valid concerns. People that wear masks, they know that droplets, when kids touch other droplets that may have went on surfaces and then they touch their face and they haven't washed their hands, that's how things spread. The CDC says that masks will take down the droplet transmission by about 50%. I also understand the concerns when it comes to those that do not want their children in masks, because although short-term studies really, there's no major concern for short-term use. Long-term studies are not adequate. And we do know that there's CO2 levels that could cause health risks. Not to mention the bacteria that can grow inside the mask that even a study at the University of Florida found. So all of them are valid concerns. We don't want to discriminate against people with asthma or respiratory issues, mental health, such as mask anxiety or claustrophobia, or a disability that may make it hard for a person to wear a mask safely. And I think if we're being honest, most children do not wear masks safely. How can we create a win-win situation for everyone? And I think that that's really what we need to be talking about more than masks or not masks. How can everybody win? And I don't think it's that hard. I think that if we focused on reducing the amount of highly trafficked areas, that we could achieve it. After all, the fear of spreading COVID is through droplets, but masks only reduce about 50%, so it helps, but it doesn't solve the problem. Every time a child switches a classroom, their chance of transmission increases. They move to a new desk that somebody else was using. Even if we sanitize it, we don't sanitize it to the place that a kid sitting in that desk 45 minutes, touching underneath, touching the sides, touching the tops, touching the backs. And so every time they're switching classrooms, the transmission increases. Even if a child was wearing a mask, the child's droplets are still going to be on that desk somewhere. So how many droplets do you think are on a desk after a child has been in a class for 45 minutes, even if they have a mask on? Multiply that by every single class, especially if masks only catch 50% of droplets. If a child has 8 periods in a day, then they have been heavily exposed to at least 27 different people's droplets on their desks that they're using. Then we send a kid to sit at that desk and we tell them that it's going to be all right because they're wearing a mask. If a kid is sitting at a stationary desk, in other words, a dedicated desk, 4 people are who they are in contact with.
I'm sorry, your 3 minutes are up. I apologize.
Instead of 32 people.
Sir, your 3 minutes are up. Thank you.
What if we switch teachers instead of switching students? A dedicated
Sir,
desk.
I'm sorry.
is way better.
Everyone gets 3 minutes. I have to hold it to that. Thank you.
And it solves all of the problems that you've addressed.
Brian?
Next is Wanda Lonecker. And just a minute, I want you to hear the alarm clock. Thank you. Okay, whenever you're ready.
My smile. You know, it's important for children, especially younger children, to be able to read. They need encouragement, and I don't think you can give that to me. But I would like to, the longer that this goes on, the more data is coming out, which I think is pretty exciting, because some of the things that we were told in the very beginning have changed, and things are changing as more and more data comes out. And I just want to make you aware so that that's not 3 minutes already.
No, I don't know what that is. I apologize. Stop.
To make you aware, as you are discussing this as a board.
Wait,
Go to your alarm.
Please stop her
I can't.
alarm.
I'm gonna turn it off. Yeah.
All right.
Give her 20 seconds.
You don't pause. Can you turn your phone off?
It did.
Okay, so there are a couple of new studies that have just come out. One was, I have to look it up, after I get done telling you about this one, but this one is from June the 1st. And this was from a study that researchers at the Washington University of Medicine in St. Louis did. And they said that they have found that people with mild COVID and even moderate COVID symptoms, which we know, and I've been in contact with children who have had COVID, and it's been very mild, like a sore throat for 2 days, and then they're over it. So, like was previously stated, it's not like a life and death thing. I also know people who have had the variant now, and it's like a cold. So we're not talking like that. Anyway, so scientists found that individuals who have recovered from a mild or moderate case of COVID have long-lived plasma cells in their bone marrow that secretes low levels of antibodies against the virus for possibly a lifetime. In the beginning, they were saying that they thought that it was only, a few weeks or something after that. But now they're finding out that it's long-lived natural immunity. So we hear a lot of talk about the vaccine, and the people that are vaccinated and everything. So I think it's pretty exciting that there's different studies coming out now in these different universities, and scientists and immunologists are finding that the natural immunity is really even better than the vaccination. So take that into consideration, because if it's 75% of the people who have been vaccinated, and then who knows how many of our students have already had COVID and recovered from it, they have the natural immunity. So maybe all this masking isn't as necessary as we're thinking. So I would just leave that with you, and thank you very much.
And I apologize for the phone.
Next is Nancy P.
Hi, Nancy Ty. I don't have any prepared remarks, which I had. I was smart enough to do so. I just wanted to say, as we're talking about all these options, there is no clear winner. Someone's going to be sad, someone's going to be happy, someone's going to be between. But for me and my family, we talk about these mitigation, we're talking about masks. Last year we had a lot more mitigation, right? Like with the barriers. And I know my kids were short, had a real hard time seeing boards and just, getting through their day with all these barriers. So I don't know if anyone can address where we stand with those events that we have to talk about, and where we stand with those for the year coming up. Again, I'm trying to find that compromise, like, give a little, take a little, would be great to talk about. From a social perspective, school is hugely social in their learning environment. It's not just the books, it's the social. My kids are regressed socially. I see it. It concerns me greatly. That they care about is who they couldn't have lunch. My kid sat by herself for weeks and was not allowed to move. To another student sitting by herself for weeks. Think about what you're doing when we do these rules, and think about what happens when the teachers and administration come in and yell at them and make them feel bad because they want to be with people. That's all I want to say. Just keep that in mind. Keep in mind that these numbers are fluctuating. The regulations fluctuate. Everyone's just kind of, I think, throwing darts at a board at this point in time. But the only thing we can do is think about the kids and think about the long-term effects when these kids no longer know how to socialize. Thank you for everything you're doing. I do think you're keeping us top of mind, so I appreciate that.
I can tell you, I just wanted to tell you, we're not using the individual shield, so I can answer that.
Next is Felix Kruppa.
My name is Felix Kruppa from Avangrid. Only smallpox has been eradicated to date. If we continue masking, social distancing, and allowing COVID-19 to rule our lives, how much longer is it going to be? Children have proven to be highly resistant to COVID-19, thus they pose minimal risk. They should be allowed to enjoy school and learning without the burden of a face covering all day long. While school is important to a child's development, it does not replace the parents. The parents should be the ones to make the decision on students masking or not. I take my job as a parent very seriously in educating my son. We started the board meeting today, Pledge of Allegiance. America is an idea that's based on civil liberties and freedoms. You guys should give the parents the option on whether their kids have to wear a mask all day around the school.
Next, Charity Longnecker.
Hi. Okay. I'm Southern, I'm gonna talk really fast and you better really. I have a son who has severe asthma. He was diagnosed when he first got diagnosed with 50% the normal breathing capacity that each one of you enjoy. My question for you is what's strenuous for him? You can look at him and you can go, well, he's 12-year-old, he's active, he's this or that. I see his daily struggles. I see him get in a swimming pool and not be able to swim halfway through the pool without coming up for air, where my daughter doesn't struggle there and she can go all the way across. I see the heartbreak in that. I also have a very healthy teenage girl who's 14 years old, and I see a total different struggle with her. Not seeing her friends, not being able to communicate and be herself. This school doesn't have uniforms and we don't control what they wear. Why should we start now? I see my children's development. Last year, they were virtual mainly because I wanted to see what in the world this disease was bringing and knowing my son's risk. I can personally say as a mother who has a child that has a severe medical condition that I am not scared of COVID. He got COVID in November and it was a tinge of a headache and a little bit sniffles and a cold. He was able to rest in bed for a couple of days and recover. You put a mask on him and he's not able to walk down these halls to class without struggling to catch his breath. Who can sit here and determine what's best for my child other than the person that's with him and has been with him since the day he was born? Don't take away my choice, because if you take away my choice, you no longer fit what I need for my child. This is the place he found happiness. He had been to other school districts. We moved school districts to be here. Don't make me hate that decision. Thank you.
Melissa Albright.
Good evening, members of the Avon Grove Charter School Board and fellow parents. I'm here today on behalf of my entire family, not just myself. I would like to express my family's feelings about all of these mask guidelines, and we are currently struggling a lot with this. As parents, I in no way, me and my husband, support mandated masking of our children or any children. The negative impacts of this situation is having on these kids is undeniable and it is irreversible. A mask should in no way be a contingency for a child to receive the education that they deserve and attend in-school learning. We are fearful as the parents of a kindergartner of how this will affect our child's ability to read emotions and recognize faces, as this is a huge part of the early childhood development and long-term safety of my child. Learning emotions through facial expressions and recognizing people that they know is crucial to identifying who they are safe to be with. What about the ones who never attended a preschool and this is their first school experience? You are bringing them into a distant, disconnected, sterile environment, one that encourages children to keep space and one that is not open or encouraging opening up for learning at all. We also have a fourth grader. This child struggles with severe ADHD. Just getting him to sit still in class and be attentive is already extremely excruciating. We cannot fathom it being possible for him to focus all day while fiddling with a mask. He would come home daily with headaches, saying he felt incapable of taking the deep breaths that he has been instructed to do through years of therapy to help with his focus and his calming of his emotions. He is incapable of now helping himself. What about the kids who struggle with opening up and engaging with other children? The mask only encourages them to shut down and distance themselves even more. This is concerning to us as parents and should be concerning for educators as well. So here we stand with our power of one, strongly advocating that we could stick to our original health and safety plan for the upcoming school year. I'm sorry, just too much else. These are times to stand up and take a stand for what is best for our children. The CDC and the government have no place in making decisions within our homes and what is best for our children. And the best way to do that is to hold true to mass choice or school, giving the power to the parents where it's rightfully belongs.
Jim and I'm gonna say Phaedra Hans signed up together, so I don't know if you want to speak separately or together.
One.
Okay.
One thing I lived at Green Street, I have 2 children in school. One that's gonna be in 5th grade.
Can you speak louder? I can't hear you.
Yes, I have 2 children in the school, one that is 13, one that's 9. And my biggest issue here is that we have taken away a choice from the children who don't have the opportunity to be vaccinated, if that's what they see fit for them, by saying that they have to go into an environment with those that are unvaccinated and unmasked. So when people are saying that we need to have our rights and civil liberties, what about the rights and the civil liberties that's being decided for those that choose to wear a mask, to choose to be vaccinated, because they think that's the correct thing? I have a child that has autism. He doesn't like wearing anything around his face. He doesn't read faces well, but he would be terrified to come into the school without knowing that other people are protecting his younger brother and himself by wearing a mask. So there's a lot of different sides to this. But without knowing who is vaccinated, you just told us that you have not decided, or you haven't, I guess you've decided not to ask who's vaccinated and who is not. Then a lot of these options that you presented here, it doesn't work, because you don't really know who's vaccinated, who is not vaccinated. If you're giving the option of not masking, then, and you don't know who is vaccinated, who's not vaccinated, then, you know, you need to be placing other types of mitigation efforts in there, which we didn't really talk about tonight at all. And I don't see how you know you can't keep physical distancing. You're giving the option of wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, and you don't know who's vaccinated or not vaccinated. You're not putting in screening testing. None of those mitigation efforts are happening. Then, you know, you have the perfect storm. You have the perfect storm of those that are vaccinated against those that are not vaccinated for creating more variants. All the data that was obtained from last year about the initial strains of COVID was based upon not having these new variants that have developed. And the perfect storm is going to be new variants.
That's 3 minutes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, because I want to make sure the board understands the vaccination part. If someone is asked about their vaccination status, the nurse says, okay, you are eligible for the vaccination, and the person says, I was vaccinated, I can do the 3 to 5 day test, but wear a mask and come to school, the nurse would ask for your vaccination card. What I wanted to make sure people understood is we're not mandating vaccinations, nor are we collecting people's vaccination cards. So if there was something happens and the parent says, my student is vaccinated, they could provide that to the nurse, and that would change the number of days that they might have to quarantine or quarantine at all. So it's not that we're not going to ask about whether they're vaccinated or not. It's just that we are not going to mandate it, nor ask you to give that information to us. So I just wanted to clarify that. And the other part, our health and safety plan is we're still going to have wipes in the classroom, cleaning your hands, all the same mandates other than the shields. So those things and the social distancing. So just so that's clarified, this health and safety plan is the same from last year with regular cleaning, where we have escalated cleaning, bathroom cleaning. So all of those things are still happening at the school.
Thank you.
Next is Eric Zagenfuss. So close.
Not many people get it right. Hi, how you doing? Eric Ziegenfuss, Oxford Township. I didn't intend on speaking tonight, but I just figured, why not? First of all, thank you for everything you do. I don't envy your position, everything that's going on right now. I have a kindergartner and a third grader who are very excited to come to school this year, hoping everything will get back to normal. One of the things that I was thinking about was the reason I don't envy your position is the big word that comes to my mind is liability. That is something that I just wouldn't want to deal with if something did happen, if something did go wrong. And I think it's the same reason why sometimes schools canceled the night before on a snow day, even before a flake has even fallen, simply because of liability. I get it. I wouldn't want the bus drivers driving. I wouldn't want the teachers driving. I totally understand that. One thing about the masks that I was thinking about is, if there was some way where, students who chose to wear a mask and have that option and do that, and then we could take the liability away from those parents that wanted to send their kids to school without wearing masks. I think having those options, letting the parents choose what they wanted to do, I think that is very important. I appreciate all the educators. I am not a teacher or an educator. I don't think I could ever do it, especially after going through last year. So I appreciate what you guys do. But I would love to be able to make the decision for my child and to allow them to go forward and to do that. And then something that we've done at my work, we've went out and we've purchased HEPA filters. We've gone above and beyond to kind of put something out there to do that, to increase our safety within the office. We are all vaccinated, but it is that extra level of security. And I'm sure there are parents and teachers, and there are funds available that we could find within the community that if we had to go out and purchase extra filters or something like that, we could certainly do that. So that's all. But I appreciate everything you guys do. Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you, but I also wanted to say the ventilation is the same as last year. So we increased the filters and the bipolarization units in the air quality. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Thank you.
Next is Rebecca Clark.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Clark. I have a petition here signed by over 400 taxpayers, parents, concerned citizens, just asking for mask choice from the parents. So after, if I could just approach and give that to you, that would be great. I have 2 children here at Avondale Charter School. I'm asking you to please continue with the health and safety plan that you have voted for in July of 2021 that stated optional masking for the 2021 or 21-22 school year. This plan places the decision of masking fully on the parents and satisfies the difficult but necessary decision to allow children back in school. I realize that this has been an exhausting and frustrating issue for the school board, teachers, and parents, which again is why I'm asking you to please vote to give parents the choice to decide what medical decisions are right for their children. In observing this, everything going on here today, I do have to say I have a younger child in school who has been struggling with masking quite a bit. And this was just a perfect example of this woman coming up here speaking. We couldn't understand her, could barely hear what she was saying. And this is what my child is going to endure every single day in school, trying to learn words, pronunciation. I hate to call you out, Kristen, but you're pulling your mask down every time you speak. So that right there just shows me how people struggle with trying to understand. And my kindergartner and my first grader trying to learn words and enunciate. So it's a huge concern for me. Her education, her being in here 5 days a week, I want her to learn, but I really feel like the mask is impeding her learning abilities. And I'm not against masking in the proper places when worn properly. They can mitigate aerosols. I wear an N95 mask 3 days a week, 8 to 9 hours a day, and have been trained to use this respiration device. I was fit tested by a professional. And every day I fit test myself with my N95 mask. I currently work only 3 days. because I physically cannot work after 3 days of being deprived of oxygen for such a long period of time. I understand what it's like for my children to struggle with breathing their own air because of masking. We're asking them to wear a mask for 8 to 9 hours a day. My daughter takes the bus. It's an hour-long drive, 7 to 10 in the morning to 4:20 in the afternoon with minimal mask breaks. I'm able to determine as an adult, how many days is too many days for me. So I've decided 3 is good for me. My children don't have a choice. They have to come 5 days or, it's truancy. I have the ability when I need a mask break to go in and take my mask off. I'm not in a negative environment as well where I would be reprimanded or am ever reprimanded by authorities to fix my mask or pull it up when I'm just trying to get a mask like some air. I'm aware of the limits and constraints of my body. But my 6-year-old isn't. She's a rule follower. She's going to listen to the teachers. She's going to do what they say. She would pass out before she would ever take her mask off because she does not like to be reprimanded and she likes to do well. So I just ask that you please reconsider and make masks optional.
Thank you.
I feel like it's towards the PAC values of our charter.
Out that there will be mask breaks for kids. If a mask is something that is voted on, I'm not saying that it is. If there are mask breaks that kids can have, they can pull their mask down as long as it's not longer than 15 minutes. So that rule was happening at school last year when we gave them mask breaks, and that 15 minutes really important. So I just wanted to point that out. Not that I'm saying masks are going to be mandated, but that is a thing. That 15 minutes is a thing.
The last one is Caitlin Gardner.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I initially was not going to come because I had seen this debate already devolve on Facebook this afternoon in the parents forum. I am speaking to you as a healthcare professional with 30 years. I appreciate your service to the school board. My family has been here for over 13 years at Charter. This is an impossibly hard decision and predicament that you're placed in. I wanted to add my comments. I literally dropped dinner in the middle of dinner to drive here when I began listening to the conversation. I didn't have prepared remarks because I didn't think I was going to come, but I can unequivocally revoke every single point that the anti-mask community has made tonight with evidence-based peer-reviewed studies. I suspect that you have already made your decision. This has been going on for far too long for you to not have. I don't expect to come here and change anyone's mind tonight. What I expected to do was come here and just let you hear the perspective of a healthcare professional, not one that is asking for understanding for having been on the front lines of this for the last 18 months, but as a healthcare professional who understands how viruses work. Viruses work by replicating, mutating, and changing themselves. We have already trusted public policy and public policing to take care of itself. It hasn't worked. That's why we're here with the Delta variant now. 97% of the cases admitted to the hospital, including pediatric cases, because of the Delta variant. We're not even tracking them. I should also have prefaced this by saying I speak as a representative of myself, not of any company or whatever that I work for. I am speaking for myself. Kids wearing masks all day and having asthma and CO2 levels. Ladies and gentlemen, your surgeons have worn masks for years when they were operating on you. They don't have brain damage. If they did, I question why you selected them as your surgeon in the first place. It is our duty to understand public health policy and allowing me. It is our duty to understand public health policy. This decision goes above and beyond the personal me thinking. Bacteria issues on a mask are solved by simply washing it or changing your mask. Viruses replicate because that is what they're allowed to do. It's what they do. That's what they're built for. the mask or masking will mitigate the ability of them to do that. We had barely gotten ahead of this now with vaccination, which 30% of the country or more is resistant to. And if we allow it to get further ahead of us, we are going to be back in the same position that we were last year. Is that 3 minutes already? No. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have so much more to add.
I'm sure everyone does. I apologize. Thank you very much.
AI DuPont had to send out overflow pediatric ICU beds today.
Thank you.
That's all I had to say.
Is there any other public comment before? Yes. If you would just come up and state your name.
My name is Lindsay Halligan, and I am a nurse that works in long-term care in Chester County. I'm not going to say the facility name, and I also wasn't planning on speaking, but I just wanted to kind of give a different perspective from another healthcare professional. I've had 3 kids in charter for several years now, and we've all had COVID. We had it in January. We had mild symptoms, and I don't want my kids to be forced to wear a mask. I am forced to wear a mask every day when I go to work in our nursing home, and that's my choice. I decided to go into the profession of nursing. I get paid well to go to work and to take that risk and to wear my mask. My kids don't. My kids are being told, you are going to go to school. You are going to go to school in person 5 days a week. You do not have that option. They should at least have the option of being able to breathe properly. I personally, as a parent, would much rather my child be quarantined for 2 weeks and have to deal with that drama and how are we going to, work this with schedules and parenting, even a couple times a year because they were exposed to a child that tested positive at school, than for them to go through it in a school year of 180 days and be uncomfortable the entire school year. So as a parent, speaking for myself, speaking for my kids who we've talked about this with, they'd rather quarantine once or twice a school year than be uncomfortable every single time that they're in the classroom. My daughter is 7. She's going into 2nd grade. She has extreme social anxiety. This year has been extremely hard for her, being home and trying to gauge how her teacher is interacting with her on Zoom when she came back part-time during the spring, trying to gauge what the other kids were looking like, in the classroom, trying to make friends. She didn't participate in the summer program. She did not wear a mask. And I saw my daughter again. And it was absolutely amazing and emotional to see her coming home, smiling, telling me, Mom, I made friends. Mom, this girl smiled at me on the playground. We were able to, sit next to each other and do the thing that we were doing, work on this art project. And it was worth it to me. Okay. One other point I wanted to touch on is that somebody had mentioned natural immunity. If you've been exposed or if you've had COVID, I definitely do believe that there are long-term antibodies. And if you are going to make a decision based on vaccination status, that you also take into consideration people that have had COVID and maybe they're not vaccinated, but they have antibodies too. And your natural immunity is much stronger than one specific spike protein vaccination, gene therapy that has been, pretty much forced on me by my pediatrician for my kids that we decided not to get because I think we're protected. And that's just me. And I also have studies, but I didn't bring them tonight. You can make that decision, for your family. And I just ask that I can make that decision for you.
My name is Ann Wilkinson, and I have lived here for 21 years. My granddaughter is going to get to go to the charter school this year. I'm so excited. My daughter was here. She had to leave to go be with the children. She wanted to show you the permanent damage she has on her gorgeous face from having to wear her mask 8 hours a day at work. Dr. Fauci himself did a great article on how 50 million people killed themselves by wearing masks during the Spanish flu. Please look that up. I do have to tell you guys look frightening. And it's hard for me to believe that you're going to be non-biased when everybody is wearing a mask. I hope that you have to wear it, really, honestly. It's frightening to me as an adult. I'm a medical professional 40 years. My experience with this, I've had the COVID very early on. All of us had it. It wasn't nothing. And it's nothing for my clients who are using steam, homeopathy, natural remedies. Anthony Fauci also did a wonderful article on hydroxychloroquine and what a wonder drug it is and how effective it is and that it's even a vaccine. But it's interesting that they changed their mind for political reasons. And we should be asking questions. We should be asking a lot of questions, not taking rights away from parents, but we should be asking a lot of questions as to why have they flip-flopped? Why have things been changing? We are the ones to be answered to. Also, my granddaughter, I will not be able to bear her wearing a mask. We have not done any masking. We've only gone places where people are not wearing masks. We only sit next to people who don't wear masks. They are not, my grandchildren are very healthy. They are not vaccinated. My daughter was not vaccinated, went to live with her father, got vaccinated and got vagal nerve damage. We have had 10 years of hell from that. As a medical professional, I was taught the quickest way to die is to puncture your skin and put pathogens in it. Let alone, we should be asking questions. What are they cleaning this stuff with? What kind of chemicals are our children being exposed to? What are the neurotoxins in this new thing that every animal died in every study? These are the questions we should be asking, not whether we're going to take the rights away from the parents and cause injury to the children. I got to be honest with you. Anybody who's pushed this has won in the Supreme Court. Anybody who has had to wear a mask and forced to and has taken this Title 42, you guys need to be looking this stuff up. They have won in court. If you're really not allowed by the Constitution to do that, there was a sentence up there saying it's not constitutionally. I got to tell you, that's not true. And it certainly hasn't held up in court. I pray God that you don't force my granddaughter to wear a mask because it'll be the most frightening experience that she's had in her life to date. That's all I have to say. I've been a medical professional for 40 years. I've treated a lot of people. The cures are being withheld. These are the questions people ask.
Hi, my name is Lance Gardner. Like a lot of other people here, I hadn't planned on coming up here and saying anything. But I've heard a lot of misinformation today. I am also a healthcare worker. I have worked in home care and outpatient settings. And I can tell you that in all of those settings, they are still using all the precautions that they were using on day one. And as we're talking about healthcare workers, and I'm looking up at the screen here, the only option up there, the CDC, are the healthcare workers that are most renowned in our country. I mean, those are the people whose job it is to protect us from this outbreak. And when I look up there and I see the recommendations by the CDC and then all of the other options, I can't help but sit to think and wonder, why are all of us second guessing the very professionals that are putting out these recommendations? And I know lots of people have had COVID already and lots of people have not had symptoms, but I can tell you as a healthcare worker, there are lots of people who get COVID and do have symptoms. And our hospitals, and all of this you can look up too, our hospitals have been overrun with people who have had COVID, and we may all know someone who has died from it. So this is no joke. And I think if we go back to the very beginning, the whole reason that we are here is for our kids. And I don't think any one of us wants to sacrifice the life of even one kid before we start taking this seriously. And there was mention, of litigation and how we cancel school because it might snow, and we don't want to put the bus drivers out there in harm's way, and we don't want to put the teachers in harm's way. But I have to wonder why we're even considering putting our kids in harm's way. And yes, it is very unfortunate that people have to wear masks, and I'm actually getting short of breath talking to you all right now through this mask. But it's better than being dead. That's the bottom line. There are lots of people out there who are dying from this. And I don't want any one of our kids to be the one here that we're all coming back to the next meeting saying, gosh, maybe we should have instituted and followed the CDC guidelines and just see how it went. And the other thing I'd like to say is that all of this could end if we all go out and get vaccinated, because we're in this situation, as was already mentioned, because there are, excuse me, we're in this situation because there are lots of people who don't want to get vaccinated. And that is what is allowing this virus to continue to replicate in more and more variants. I may not have used my full 3 minutes, but I'm finished.
Thanks.
My name is Deirdre Looney. I actually went to Applewood Charter School. Number one, I saw something about the PCR test. They have been recalled because they can't decipher between COVID and the flu. So if a child tests positive for COVID, but really has the flu, but they took that PCR test, how do you know if they have the flu or COVID? Also, a child with the vaccine on the CDC website, you can still spread COVID and you can still get COVID. So why is it that a child that is vaccinated gets all these special privileges because they're vaccinated, but someone who's not, who made that choice not to, or maybe they have medical reasons as to why they can't get vaccinated, doesn't? They have to quarantine for X amount of days no matter what, period. But the person who got vaccinated, even though they can still spread the virus and get the virus, same as someone who isn't, but it's only 3 to 5 days or whatever, what's that? Also, I pulled up the CDC website. It only took me about 2 seconds to find this. While children have been less affected by COVID-19 compared to adults, children can be infected with the virus that causes COVID-19. Some children develop serious illness, while most will be asymptomatic, will have no symptoms at all, or be asymptomatic. So why are we masking children? This is doing psychological damage to these kids that is going to take years to overcome. I have severe ADHD. I could never in a million years imagine sitting through school for 8 hours a day while a teacher tells me, okay, you can take your 15-minute breathing break. You can breathe fresh air for 15 minutes. You are telling a child, you can take your mask off, go ahead, breathe some air. I mean, that is just, I can't wrap my mind around that. I've worked in childcare for many, many years. I can't even fathom having to try to keep a mask on a 4-year-old child for 8 hours a day. I mean, their lungs are still developing at this point, and they're breathing in carbon dioxide all day. My friend showed me a picture of her child's mask. It was brown. That is what her child breathed in all day. Is dirt, bacteria that causes pneumonia, RSV, also Bordetella, and who knows what else is on there. If I am able to drink a drink through a mask, which I did do, you can still, COVID's getting in and out. A child should never be masked for 8 hours a day. That is child abuse, psychological child abuse.
Thank you. I'm sorry, she had put her hand up. She was next. You'll follow.
I can.
Joanna Brown. I'm in the Oxford Area School District.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that one reason we chose Avon Grove Charter was because it was a strongly based community school. And so I would like to see Charter be able to do what's best for the whole community. And part of that is having our children in school, in-person learning as much as possible. Like, it was very hard on everybody to split back and forth, and it was necessary. But I'd like to see whatever mitigation efforts we can take to keep kids in school is what we do. And I don't want to touch on the mask, but I think it's a small act to keep students in person learning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Charisma Wanmaker. I'm a high schooler. I also do have medical rights, so I would like to make masks optional for the parents and for the kids. Also, thank you too for everything. We're doing this for the school and for also the kids, and this is the best school I've ever really been to, so I would like to keep it that way. But I'm also trusting you guys to make the best decision for me, my friends, and also for you guys as well. So I also would like to say again, thank you for everything you've been doing.
I'll do a last call. So thank you, everyone that got up to speak. I know it's not easy. I hate doing it every week. So it's, thank you very much. And I also want to say thank you. I noticed everyone was supporting each other no matter what side. So thank you very much. I saw a lot of clapping. So what we'll do is, this is the hard part. So we'll open it back up to the board for questions or comments. And then if anyone has to like to make a motion, we can begin the process of that.
Sure, I just had a question. As we look at the options, I think we laid out a loose structure for switching out of option 2. But as the other options exist there, do we have any idea how we may flop out of an option based upon what's going on? So if we go with, for example, option 1, if once the CDC drops that, or if they do, would we automatically come back together?
I think they're looking, I think the school is looking for us to set some kind of guideline.
Okay.
So I'm going to we'll take what you said, option 1. I think we need to determine as a board a process to move forward and to answer that. You know, some of it's going to be CDC guidelines, and then I think some of it will be what we've determined how we're going to review. Is that in agreement?
And we can always reassess too.
Yeah, nothing is, you know, we can call an emergency board meeting if it goes away tomorrow or whatever the vote is, you know, we can change it. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I'm okay proposing that we vote on option 1A to start out the year implementing universal masking orders until October 1st and reassess.
So there's a motion on the floor for option 1A. Is there a second?
I'll second 1A. Michelle, okay.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, so I'll go through and we'll do the vote. Ryan?
Approve.
Stacey? Approve. Julia? Approve. Stacey?
Approve.
Colleen? Michelle?
Approve.
So that will be 7-1 in favor. Motion carried.
6-1, you're down to 6.
6-1, sorry, I forgot Eugene. 6-1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Having said that, so that means until October 1st, so that's the first month of class, masks will be required for teachers, students, faculty, administration, at which time we'll have our next meeting in September and we can reassess and if we need to make other decisions. We're going to move on to the rest of the meeting. So thank you. Please stay, but thank you if that's what you were looking for. Thank you for listening. Health and safety plan update.
Hold on, I didn't know if it would go that fast. So, I'm thrown off for a minute. All right, so next on the agenda is emergency instructional
I'm
time.
sorry, yes, emergency instruction.
So we had passed our EITT form back in June. It was submitted to the Department of Education. They asked for some additional information. Specifically, they wanted to see that if, for any particular reason, the school were to need to implement a hybrid or virtual learning model again, what would our plans be? So it's a contingency plan. We didn't include that in the first one. We just had accounted for the asynchronous instructional days around our parent-teacher conferences. So an updated EITT form was submitted to board docs. It includes the same hybrid schedule that we maintained last school year, where we would have 2 groups of students coming to school with Wednesdays being virtual. And then just the provision of it, for some reason we needed to shut down completely, that we would be equipped to offer full-time remote learning and have both the technology and wherewithal to be able to do that. So that is just the addition to that form. I already met with the department's student services, and they had said that that was meet their requirements and what they were looking for. I asked them to kind of put eyes on it before getting board vote again, and then if it wasn't what they were looking for, having to come back again. So they had said that that was what they were looking for and that this would be sufficient. So that's not for board vote to approve the, I would be looking for a motion to approve the emergency instructional time form as it's presented.
Brian, I'll make a motion to approve the Avon Grove Charter Emergency Instructional Time Form as presented. Stacy Barno.
Is there a second?
I second Julia Byram.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So moved. Student handbook.
Go ahead, keep going.
We had previously discussed the preliminary release pending official board approval at tonight's meeting, so that we could have made that available to parents during our back to school form process. The handbooks are then presented to the board tonight for vote and a motion to approve the student handbooks as presented for this school year.
Is there a motion to approve the handbook as presented?
A motion to approve the handbook as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second Brian Ledman.
Thank you. Deji first, Brian second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved.
So next up is Coatesville School District payment. So just for everyone who's still here, Coatesville Area School District still owed us payments from last school year. So they did pay us in full for last school year this past month in 3 installments. So there were 2 payments of $693,000, 2 installments. So it's $1,386,240.98. And then they also did a rec payment of $682,373.94. So at this point, Coatesville is paid for last school year. So I just wanted to make sure that the public and the board knew that that did happen this month with 3 payments.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Heckendorn and Shiles Architect Contract Review.
We already did
Oh,
that.
you see, it was on here, Brian.
I didn't know.
Actually, that sounds familiar.
And the only thing I wanted to add to my report is I did forget at the work session to add, they had STEM camp and farm camp that was also very successful. I skipped a slide, so I'm sorry about that. But other than that, that concludes my report.
Great, thank you very much. Treasurer's report, Deji.
Yeah, just one order of business. I need a motion to approve the request to pay out all unused vacation time from the 2020-2021 school year to the 4 members of the executive leadership team in the light of extenuating circumstances of the pandemic during the school year and pursuant to the provisions of the board policy 300 that permits exceptions for extenuating circumstances. So I need a motion to approve that.
So I think there was
There was amendment to that.
an amendment to that with regard to the administrative team. So that it was a more global capture. So I would suggest that you just amend the motion to include the administrative team for any days beyond the 60 that they're permitted by policy to carry over.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I will amend it. Thank you for that, for the entire administration.
So just to recap, the motion is to pay out all unused vacation time to the administration time in excess of 60 hours. This is a one-time exception.
60 days.
60 days. What did I say? 60 hours? 60 days. 60 days. 60 days. It's a one-time exception in recognition of the extenuating circumstances last year. So having that motion, thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay,
Michelle McCray.
thank you. Any discussion? All in,
I said, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? So moved. Thank you, Dave.
Consent agenda?
Yep.
Back up again?
You're up again.
So I motion approval of three documents. Approval of the July 2021 funds activity report, approval of the July 2021 vendor bill report, and approval of the cash disbursements over $515,000 and ACH debit transactions report. All of these documents are documents for just the everyday business of the school, but require approval from the board at our board meetings.
Excellent, thank you. So do we have a motion to approve the finance consent agenda as presented?
Stacy Barno, I'll make a motion to approve the routine business consent agenda as presented.
Do I have a second?
Ryan Ladman, I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? So moved. Awesome. Personnel. Come on down.
I have to come down so that Mike can pick you up. Sorry.
Yeah, come on down. Be part of the crowd.
All right, the personnel consent agenda is as follows. Resignation. Jill Masters, instructional aide, effective July 15th. Alan Cower, seasonal soccer coach, August 4th, 2021. Jennifer Taylor, ELC instructional aide, August 10th. Maureen Tyree, communication and media coordinator, August 20th. Sarah Lucas, high school science teacher, effective August 23rd. And Macy Wetzel, first grade teacher, effective August 23rd. Underneath there are seasonal staff, and these are seasonal staff that worked during this summer. So that's why I separated the two. They are Tennyson Nelson and Tyler McCarver, both who worked. I know I was going to butcher that last name. They both supported the Michael Farm intern, and that ended effective the 20th. James Winiarski, Joshua Sapila, Joshua Rain, Matthew Rain, Reed Skelly, and Daniel Michelle all worked within the summer facilities, and that ended August 13th. Eliza Malloy, she was hired as a seasonal ESY teacher. So that has also ended effective July 29th. However, I did note that the board approved the hire of Eliza at the June 15th board meeting. She has since rescinded her acceptance of the middle school special education teacher. So that's why I noted that here. We don't have any retirements nor releases. We had one leave, which is who's missing today, Donna Archer, our business administrator, effective July 15th for FMLA. We had 9 professional staff members that were hired. Kelly Brignola, special education kindergarten teacher, effective August 18th. Rachel Hobbs, middle school English teacher, effective August 18th. Aaron Rollins Henderson, high school science teacher, effective August 18th. Jennifer Smolitsky, fourth grade teacher, effective August 18th. Carissa Thomas, middle school special education teacher, effective August 18th. Christine Sullivan, ESSER, ELC interventionist, effective August 18th. Giovanna Dadazio, also an ESSER ELC interventionist, effective August 18th. Shannon Palmer, ESSER State Road interventionist, effective August 18th. And Chelsea Williams, the first grade teacher, effective August 18th. We also have 6 support staff. Christopher Trainer, ELC full-time custodian, effective August 10th. Jake Sarkisian, part-time Wolf's Group aide, effective September 7th. Dawn Campbell, part-time ELC instructional aide, effective August 18th. Maria Cortez, part-time ELC cafeteria associate, effective August 18th. Ashley Sanchez, part-time aftercare aide, effective August 30th. And Catherine Sparks, part-time ELC instructional aide, and that is effective August 24th. We did not contract with any vendors nor hire any additional seasonal staff. Therefore, administration is recommending the approval of the staffing changes provided within the personnel consent agenda, specifically items listed from 8A through 8I.
Thank you, Tasha.
You're welcome.
Do I have a motion from the board to approve the staffing changes provided with the personal consent agenda, specifically items listed 8A through 8I?
Ryan Ledner, motion to approve
What I
consent agenda from 8A to 8I.
so long.
I'll second that, Michelle McCray.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. To those leaving, thank you for your service, and to those coming on board, welcome. We look forward to meeting you. All right, moving right along. So we're towards the end. Any final reports or comments from the school principals or directors? Any other committee reports? And final is public comment on non-agenda items. Is there anything we didn't cover? All right, so thank you very much, and I appreciate everyone being here and their comments. I really do. Thank you so much. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Stevie, I can call your motion.
I have a second.
Julia Byron, my second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Closed. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming, everyone.